we actually make a skip in the kinnot, because kinnot number 2, kinnot Beis, as it might be listed in your kinos, is only said on Motzi Shabbos. So we skip now to Gimel. And this kinnot was actually written quite some time ago by a very, very famous Jew named Rav Kahane-inisights. Rav Kahane-inisights, exactly who he was, is not 100% agreed upon. But according to Taisus, he was actually the son of the great Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. He was Rav Elazar, the son of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. We're talking about a person of tremendous stature, tremendous greatness. Now, what's written in this kinnot is something that seems to be somewhat poetic, but a rule that we have to get clear now as we progress to Tisha B'Av is that nothing is poetic. There's no such thing as poetry for the sake of poetry. Everything is deep and everything is meaningful, and every nuance and every rhyme and every word is filled with infinite meaning. The Rav Kahane sets up this kinnot is that it's Eretz Yisrael talking. And it's Eretz Yisrael talking to us and telling us why we have to mourn. And Eretz Yisrael is describing to us as a mother to a child that on this night, tonight, both Beis Hamikdashes were destroyed, and the Meraglim came back with an evil decree, and 5 altogether throughout Jewish history. Tragic events occurred, actually in more contemporary times. Other things have occurred on the Tisha B'Av. And that's the text. That Eretz Yisrael is teaching us, telling us that we should cry because it's a very, very difficult night. Now what's interesting is that if you go through each one of the stanzas, you'll notice that every one of the stanzas begins with a word, or at least ends with a word. And that is B'leil Zeh. It starts with B'leil Zeh, and then there's the refrain after every paragraph, B'leil Zeh, on this night. Now, like I said, there's no such thing as poetry. We're not poets, and neither is B'leil Zeh Kalir. And I think that in this refrain of on this night, on this night, on this night, this happened, on this night, this happened, on this night, this happened, there might be a very, very strong message for us about this night and about what we can do on this night and about how we can channel our efforts this night, hopefully, so we're never going to have this night again. And I'll tell you what I mean. I'd imagine we all noticed that life can be bumpy. And there's no one who doesn't have bumps in the road of life. Some people have big bumps, some people have small bumps, some bumps are closer together, some are a bit farther apart, but everyone's got them. There's no one who doesn't have bumps in the road of life. Now, there's some people when they hit these bumps in the road of life, so their approach to these bumps, when they hit these bumps, their approach to these bumps is game over. I'm done. I can't take the bumps. Too many bumps, I'm out. It's too hard. It's too much. I'm done. Game over. That's how some people approach these bumps. But there are other people that approach these bumps that when they hit these bumps, their response is not game over. Their response is time to up my game. And I'm not going to let these bumps throw me off the road of life. Two different approaches. Some people, they hit these bumps and the response is game over. I don't like the bumps. They hurt too much. I'm out. Game over. But there are other people whose response is there's no game over. I'm upping my game. I'm upping my game and I'm going to come from this bump something that's bigger than the bump. Now, the thing that we have to keep in mind is that these bumps that we have in our life, like I said, everyone's got them. Every one of them was placed on your road of life by somebody who loves you very, very much. And I just want to make this point for a second, that Hashem loves you very, very much. And I don't mean he loves Klal Yisrael. I mean, he does love Klal Yisrael. That's not what I mean. I mean, he loves you. And his love for you is the deepest love that anyone will ever, ever have, because it depends on nothing. It doesn't matter if you've done the worst things in the world, he never stopped loving you. Because his love doesn't depend on what you do or what you didn't do, what you should have done or what you shouldn't have done. Hashem loves you because he loves you, because he loves you, because he loves you, period. And there's nothing you can ever do to lose his love, period. And the Sfarim say that it's obsessive. It thinks about you all the time. It follows you everywhere you go. Even when you sleep, it sits there right there. When you wake up, it's like, just talk to me, just talk to me. So sometimes we say Moedani. Sometimes we forget. It doesn't give up on us. Never will. Because his love is the most genuine, it's the most real, and in our worst times, and it's going to be very hard to hear, and I apologize. In our worst times, where we might have been doing the worst things, in the mystical books, they say he was right there, hugging us, because he knew how badly we were hurting, because otherwise we wouldn't have done it. And so then the question is, why would he put the bump there? And the reason is because he wants us to become bigger and bigger than the bump. That he says, I love you so much that I know who you can become from this bump is bigger than the bump. And so Kadosh Baruch Hu lovingly places sometimes very uncomfortable things in our life. Because if we hit that bump and we say, I'm not saying game over, I'm pushing hard. I'm going to build myself, I'm going to become something amazing from this bump, then who we can become is bigger than the bump. But if we say game over, we just missed the point of the bump. Now I think the question is, who are we? Are we the game over type people? Or are we the upper game type people? And it's probably not black and white, but one of the key characteristics of a game over type person is if he's a blamer. If his entire explanation for why he never became who he should have become is because of things he went through and the people in his life, well, I would have been great, but I had this Rebbe, I had this Chabrusa, I had this roommate, I had this yeshiva, I had this Tisha B'Av, the whole, whatever it is. Yeah, I would have been great, but, yeah. So then just know that you're probably a game over type of guy. But if a person decides, you're right, I may have had a bad Rebbe, a bad Chabrusa, a bad family, a bad parents, a bad upbringing, but I don't care because I'm going to be amazing, then you're not a game over guy. You're an up your game guy. Because an up your game guy takes responsibility for his life and says, I don't need everyone else to make me great because I'm going to make me great. Now, the mushal for a game over guy and an up your game guy is night and day. And I mean literally night and day. See, during the daytime, the light that you have in your life is coming from somewhere else. Coming from somewhere else, the sun. And you don't have to do anything to have light in your life. Nighttime, if you don't decide to be proactive, your life is going to be dark. A person who makes it in the nighttime, who turns on his light, who says the whole world can be dark, but I'm not going to be, that's an up your game type of guy. And what it might very well be, as a message from this kinnot, is that what Eretz Yisrael is saying to us when they're saying, Klal Yisrael, we got a lot to mourn tonight. But part of the reason why we dropped this low is because we were game over guys. And if we learn to be upper game guys, and we learn to live in the night, that it might be dark outside, but I'm fire inside. And it might be dark outside, but there's so much light coming out of me, so we're going to make it through this gullus. We're going to bring Mashiach. And if so, what Rav Kahane is doing over here is giving us a piece of advice. And my recommendation is, as we go through this, there's a lot to think about because the content itself is very deep. But one of the things we can drive into ourselves is maybe something we can work on. As our Rossman said so beautifully, tonight's a night to work on things. It's not a night to remember. It's not a night to talk about all the horrible things we went through. It's time to get our acts together. And if we listen to Eretz Yisrael talking to us in this kinnot, Eretz Yisrael is saying, Klal Yisrael, in the night, in the dark of the night, you got to shine. And I think we may come out of this kinnot with a whole new perspective on life. That's something that might actually bring us out of the darkness that we're in. So that will start. This is kinnot Gimel. It's written by Rav Shlomo ben Gavirol. Shlomo ben Gavirol, this is an unknown individual to me, but apparently was someone of a tremendous stature who lived in Spain in the 11th century. And the kinnot that he depicts over here is really an analogy. And it's a fascinating analogy, actually. It's a discussion, actually a fight, between two ladies. One of them, his name is Ahala, and one of them, his name is Ahaliva. Now, these two ladies, were married to one man, and both of them were unfaithful. And this man threw them both out of the house, and now they, at some later point, are discussing with each other, fighting with each other about who went through more trauma from being thrown out of the house. Ahala says, I did. Ahaliva says, no, I did. And they're depicting the trauma they went through after being unfaithful and being thrown out of the house, fighting over who had it worse. And the analogy is to our Beis HaMikdash and the counterfeit Beis HaMikdash that was made by the 10 tribes on the other side of Eretz Yisrael. The background to this is something that, not for now, but Klal Yisrael was split into two, and there was the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, and there was a counterfeit Beis HaMikdash that was with the 10 Shvatim in the other part of Eretz Yisrael. Our Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and their Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Ahala is their Beis HaMikdash, and Ahaliva is our Beis HaMikdash. And the analogy is that these two Beis HaMikdashes are sort of fighting over who had it worse when they were unfaithful to Hashem. Whose destruction was worse? Was the destruction of Yerushalayim worse than the destruction of the counterfeit Beis HaMikdash on the other side of Eretz Yisrael? Who had it worse? Now, as you read through this, it's certainly very, very descriptive and very, very painful. But I think there's actually an underlying message here in this analogy that can be very powerful for us and something that can motivate us and push us a little bit in the areas that we might be having trouble working on, and we all have those. And if you don't, then you have more than everyone else. Everyone has things they're having trouble working on. And it could be here in this mushal, there's a bit of a message for us. I'll tell you what I mean. One of the more enigmatic individuals in Sefer Bereshis is a lady named Hagar. Now, Hagar actually has a very special background. Her father was a king of Egypt, and he was very enamored by Avram Avinu and really very much wanted his daughter to even at the expense of becoming a princess, go live with Avram Avinu, even if it means being a maid, just go, be with that great person, Avram Avinu. It's a very special story. So he sends his daughter Hagar to go live with Avram. Now, there's a chazal that says that after she went through a number of circumstances, she ultimately returned back to Mitzrayim and became the princess that she wasn't supposed to be and lived with her father, and this story doesn't end happily ever after. And it's sort of curious when you hear this chazal, like, isn't that sad? Like, this king who was so Moser Nefesh, he gave up his daughter, like, go live. Yeah, go live with Avram Avinu. Go. Yeah, so serious nefesh of a king, really, to give up his daughter to go live with someone who's so spiritually, and yet his daughter just came back at the end and just started living with him again and became the princess that she was never supposed to be. It's sort of a sad story. And one wonders, like, what did the king do wrong? It seems like he did such a meritorious thing for it to end up with such a sad ending. I'll tell you the pshat. The pshat is that if you want your kids to be great, and you want your kids to reach spiritual levels, don't tell them to go live with Avram Avinu. You do it yourself. But if you're telling your kids, you do this correctly, and I'm just going to be the same person I always was, just know your kids aren't going to be great. Because the greatest way to make your kids great is to make sure you're great yourself. Now, it could be in this mushal of these two ladies who are unfaithful to their husband and were kicked out of the house. You know, these two ladies who were wives, but they're also either mothers or potential mothers. And what might be under the surface over here for us is that Klal was sitting here tonight trying to figure out how to make it better tomorrow. We're sitting here tonight trying to figure out how to change things. Just know, don't put all your eggs in your kid's basket. You start changing yourself. The things that you're weak in, if you're not good at making brachos, your kids aren't going to make brachos. If you're not good at benching, your kid's not going to bench. If you're not careful with keeping Shabbos, your kids aren't going to keep Shabbos. And if you're not careful with Lashon Hara, your kids are going to speak Lashon Hara all the time. If we want to create a better tomorrow, and we want to fix the world, and we want to make the next generation amazing, so the first step is make this generation amazing. And as we read through the story about these two women, who potentially could have had very different lives. Ones with kids who are tzaddikim, I don't know what happened to the kids. I don't even know if they had kids. But one thing's for sure, kids wouldn't have been tzaddikim because they weren't. And if as we read this and we read about these two ladies who messed up so much, and it's a mashal for Klal Yisrael, I think everyone in this room, and I'm not excluded from anything, myself, can maybe make a personal commitment that even the things that we personally don't care about, we're going to work with them anyway for the sake of our kids. For the sake of building an incredible tomorrow for Klal Yisrael. Because if today is not good for Klal Yisrael, tomorrow is not going to be any better. So that will, so kinnot dalid, Shoimrain kol titain is kinnot. And kinnot is actually written by an unknown author. The only thing we do know about him is he lived approximately between the years 500 and 1,000, which is quite approximate. But obviously a person of stature, a person of greatness. And what he writes over here is, it's really a kinnot despair. And what the author is describing is really the fact that it seems like we have no hope. He describes the fact that Avram is praying to Hashem, please build the base of Mikdash. Yitzchak is praying to Hashem, please build the base of Mikdash. Yaakov, all the 12 Shvatim are praying to Hashem, please build the base of Mikdash. And Hashem has not yet. It's okay. He goes on to describe the fact that the rivers are screaming to Hashem to build the base of Mikdash. The mountains are screaming to build the base of Mikdash. The constellations, the stars in the sky are screaming to Hashem to build the base of Mikdash. And Hashem is still not okay. And the feeling of despair, the feeling of yish, of impossibility, is one that if you read this well, you should feel it. That we're stuck, we're in a desperate state, things haven't gotten all that much better, and it's hard to see them getting too much better. What's interesting is like this. This, is written in the order of the alphabet. Meaning the first verse, there's Aleph, second verse is Beis, third verse is Gimel, second, etc., just like Echa, just like our Rasul explained, is actually a pattern of reading this. And each one has its right reason why it is that the author chose to write it that way. And like I said, and I can't emphasize this enough, we're not poets. That's not what this is about. These kinnot are deep, and every nuance has way more depth than we ever be able to come up with. But in the structure of the Aleph phase, of which this is written, there's also depth. And I want to suggest why and what the meaning is behind the structure of the Aleph phase that this author put the kinnot. This feeling of despair, this feeling of impossibility, I have a strong suspicion that every one of us in this room knows the feeling. And my guess is that that feeling is something that many of us have confronted since we've been initiating. I can imagine that it only took a day or two before you started thinking to yourself, when seeing some of the older guys, seeing some of the more progressed, I can never be that. When learning halachas and thinking you're going to repeat that. When opening up the Gemara and thinking I'm going to read that. And again. And this feeling of despair and this feeling of being overwhelmed is something that is very real and very common. And particularly for people who are making shifts in their life and trying to figure things out. A lot of the accompanying feeling is just overwhelmed. I think probably the person who felt most overwhelmed in his life, similar to maybe what some of us are experiencing, is actually Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu came from a background that, no matter where we came from, doesn't compete. Avram's background, as much as our parents may not have been religious, I'd imagine none of them were idol worshippers, and certainly none of them were idol worshippers were. And when Avram Avinu then understood that he was going to be, in God's words, You're going to be great. You're going to spread my name throughout the world. You're going to turn around the entire world. You're going to teach the whole world. I can imagine that Adam even felt at that point, I can't be that. I can't do that. I can't read that. There's no way. So it's interesting because if you look at the pasuk right after Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Adam, you're going to be great. You're going to change the whole world. He says to him 2 words, Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha means go, but it's not exactly the way you'd say go. If you were to say go, you'd say Lech. Go. Hashem says Lech Lecha, which implies go, step, step. And I think what Hashem is telling out in Binu is, you might be feeling overwhelmed, you might feel like you can't. Take a step, take another step, take another step, take another step, take another step. You will see, you will get there. But if you don't start the journey, you will. And as they say, and someone says it, and whoever says it was wise, the journey of a million miles begins with step. A life, and a life, and a life. I haven't got the message, and you get stepping. I'll show you something interesting. That Lech Lecha command that Abraham had to leave his house, and leave his birthplace, and begin teaching the world, that was his first test. The last one was the Kedah Yitzchak. We had to sacrifice his son. It's interesting because those 2 words, Lech Lecha, appear in that story as well. The pasuk says that Hashem commands Avraham Avinu, Lech Eretz Maria, go, Lech Lecha Eretz Maria, go to Eretz Maria. And that was the command to kill his kid. That was Lech Lecha. And with the message, which is glaring, is that the same steps that started the process are the same steps that got him to the end of the process. And all they did was keep stepping. And if we teach ourselves not to be overwhelmed by the massive, massive gap between who I am and who I want to be, rather just keep our eye on the next step, and you keep taking step after step, you're going to know from your person or the past your person, okay, this is guaranteed. And so this kinnot here is describing despair of looking around and seeing things don't seem to get all that better. In the past 80 years, maybe we thought things were getting better until October 7th, when we saw things weren't getting better. Despair, overwhelming. Our job tonight is to look into ourselves and decide what steps we're going to take. And while we think to ourselves, the steps we're going to take, I have a journey that's a million miles ahead of me, and it doesn't matter. Lech Lecha, Lech Lecha. You keep taking the steps, even if it's just staying 2 more minutes in the day's medrash, or skipping 5 more minutes of Shabbos, or it's davening 3 more words to consider. In 2 months, you'll add on, it'll be a little more. And what started out as your Lech Lecha Me'aretz Lecha, will end up being also the Kedah Yitzchak. It could be this is why the kinnot is built on the Aleph base. Because there's no greater step after step after step after step after step than the Aleph base. There's Aleph, there's Beis, there's Gimel. Yeah? 1, 2, 3, 4. And when the kinnot is describing despair, it's getting bad. Everyone's praying. God doesn't seem to be listening. The rivers are screaming. The stars are screaming. Our is screaming out. All the shvatim are pleading in despair, overwhelmed. You know what the message of the kinnot is? Klal Yisrael, take a step. And take another step. You'll see. Don't get stuck in the despair. Don't get stuck in being not in Klal Yisrael's history and not in your own personal history. And if while we're reading this, we can drive it to ourselves. My job is just to take the next step. I hope we don't need more than another year of steps. And as Hashem, Klal Yisrael is going to get where it needs to be. And each one of us is going to get where we need to be.